I do want to get to Dave Ehrenberg. I think Dave is with us, the great Dave Ehrenberg. And Dave, great to see you. As always, you're always terrific on these legal issues. And, you and I were texting, I think it was last week, saying we got to talk about Epstein. There's a lot going on. This massive election happened. So I appreciate your patience in waiting and standing by. But, the election stuff, as big as it is sort of, casting a shadow and perhaps blocking from our view some pretty important legal headlines. And one of them being in the Comey case. I just saw this a little while ago, that a federal judge is ordering prosecutors in the case of James Comey to produce to defense lawyers a trove of materials from the Justice Department's investigation. And the judge essentially said to the Justice Department that they had sort of an indict first, investigate second posture. These are not good things to hear when you're the prosecutor in a case like it. Sounds almost every day there's a new revelation that says that this Comey case is in trouble.
It is in trouble, Jim. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah.
And it's even worse that the judge, or the magistrate judge who said this, was a top executive or top prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia, the office that is now prosecuting Comey, led by acting U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, who was Trump's personal lawyer, an insurance lawyer who has never prosecuted a case. So here's this guy who's got all this experience in that office prosecuting cases, looking at this neophyte prosecutor saying, what's going on here? What are you doing? So it's a real embarrassment. And he said it in front of her. She was standing there in the courtroom. And the issue here is that the government, trying to justify that this was not vindictive prosecution, that they've got all this evidence, showed communications between Daniel Richmond, who is a confidant, friend, and lawyer to Jim Comey, and how they had communications where Comey instructed Richmond to leak. Problem is, number one, these are possibly attorney-client privilege conversations and should not be just distributed. Number two, the government did not turn this information over to the defense, which is why the magistrate judge gave the prosecution a real tongue lashing, saying you're supposed to turn this over. This is really unfair. Number three, just because Comey had authorized Richmond to disclose certain materials to the press has nothing to do with this indictment, which is about whether or not information was disclosed to the press over the Russia investigation or the Clinton investigation by a current FBI agent, a current FBI employee. And Richmond at the time was not a current FBI employee. So this is like a data dump that doesn't get the prosecution from point A to point B.
Interesting. And so, I mean, you feel pretty strongly we're not going to get to a trial in this or the James case, or what do you think? That this could just blow up between now and then?
There are so many reasons why this case will be dismissed before it ever gets to a jury. These cases are what we call in the legal community as weak sauce. That's a fancy Latin phrase, Jim.
Weak as sauce, I think, is the correct Latin there, but yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's so weak because, I mean, let's talk about the Comey case.
Yeah.
The indictment was so vague, we didn't know. And now we starting to get bits and pieces that it's about Richmond. Remember, at first we thought it was Andrew McCabe and how Comey authorized Andrew McCabe to leak. And that, of course, was not true. So now it's about Comey authorizing Richmond to leak. But here's the thing about the Richmond leak. The Richmond leak was investigated by the FBI already. Arctic Freeze, Arctic Haze. There's so many Arctics. Arctic Haze was the investigation.
Right.
And the FBI interviewed Richmond, and Richmond said, no, Comey never told me to leak. How are you going to get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt? Who's your witness now? Who's going to, you think Comey's going to take the stand and say, yes, I told him to leak? No. So the FBI at the time said this case is not going anywhere. We're not filing charges. Bill Barr thought we're not filing charges. John Durham thought we're not filing charges, but only because Trump ordered Lindsay Halligan to file charges or charges filed. And by the way, if you're wondering about those documents that showed that Comey did authorize Richmond to leak, that was about a conversation that Comey had with Trump about Michael Flynn, and it did relate to Russia. But at the time, Richmond was not an employee of the FBI. So the question from Ted Cruz, by way of Senator Grassley, was, did you ever authorize anyone at the FBI to leak about Russia or about the Clinton investigation? And the answer is no. And the answer is still no to this day.
Yeah. Fascinating. I mean, and it's amazing. I mean, it's not amazing. It's just predictable that they're going down these roads and pursuing these political prosecutions. Whereas, the Epstein investigation, they that was a hot potato they threw out the window as soon as they came back into office. And Congressman Jamie Raskin recently sent a letter to the Department of Justice about this and asked what happened to the investigation into the co-conspirators. And CBS News reported this, that Jamie Raskin, the congressman from Maryland, he was the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, is seeking documents from the Justice Department on its move earlier this year to end the investigation into alleged co-conspirators of the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Raskin wrote in this letter, I write to demand an explanation for why DOJ has abandoned the women and girls abused by Mr. Epstein, Ms. Maxwell, and their co-conspirators, fired or cut off career prosecutors from the case, which that's been a big deal, and ceased its investigation into one of the largest sex trafficking rings in history. This is what Raskin wrote to Pam Bondi. This is a letter obtained by CBS. And what's interesting about this, I'm just going to go down to this paragraph below and read it to you, Dave. It says this: the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York was running an active investigation into Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirators until January 2025, when prosecutors were directed to transfer the Epstein case files to the Justice Department's headquarters in what Raskin said was a, quote, sudden and dramatic shift in the posture of the investigation. The investigation into co-conspirators has inexplicably ceased, he said. I mean, I think this is wild, and it's so undercovered. This Epstein stuff, Trump has succeeded in one thing. He's been able, just because he's kicked up a storm in every direction and all these different fronts, he's managed to make the Epstein news to kind of go to the back burner and beyond. But this to me sounds like potentially some blockbuster stuff going on here that has just not been revealed.
That would be big news, because it was clear when the number 2 person at the DOJ, Todd Blanche, interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell, that the purpose for interviewing the devil's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, was not to get information about co-conspirators. It was to exonerate Donald Trump. And we know that because of the questions asked. We know that because they sent down the number 2 person who had nothing to do with this case, who was not well versed in this case, who didn't know about the follow-up questions to be asked. And number 3, we know that it was not about co-conspirators because they instantly said, we're going to release the transcript. If this were about finding co-conspirators, you would never release a transcript right away, because that alerts any co-conspirators out there. So that's why it was never the intent to go after new people. It was always the intent to show the world that Donald Trump didn't engage in anything criminal with Jeffrey Epstein. And quite frankly, I don't have any evidence that he did, but his name is in the Epstein files, which is why he's ordering the Epstein files to remain sealed, and is denying that his name was on that infamous birthday card that he
the book.
Signed. The book, right, exactly. So I'm not surprised that they're not pursuing co-conspirators. They want this thing to be put in the annals of history. They want this to be over with and to move on. In fact, Trump has said that he wants to move on. But if there is proof that there was an active investigation of co-conspirators and that the Trump administration put the kibosh on that, that would be big news. And one more point of it, I don't know even if they did get information about co-conspirators, if they would be able to prosecute them. There's statute of limitations issues. There's evidentiary issues. A lot of time has passed. There's the non-prosecution agreement, which could apply to named co-conspirators, although Ghislaine Maxwell tried to say it applied to her as an unnamed co-conspirator. So there's a lot of issues, but that's different than just saying we're not even going to pursue. We're going to end the entire investigation altogether.
Yeah. And I mean, and the fact that Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, won't swear in Adelita Grijalva, and she would be that decisive vote in releasing the Epstein files. It just, at every turn, it's interesting what's been reported and what's been coming out lately, that they've just really had a concerted effort to keep this under wraps and completely contrary to what they promised during multiple political campaigns, and most especially during the 2024 presidential campaign, when all these surrogates for Trump said, "Oh yeah, this is what we're gonna do as soon as we get in there." It's wild.
That's
Yeah,
part of the problem, is
yeah,
that it was people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino who were out there on podcasts saying,
yeah,
release the Epstein files. There's a list. And now they're saying nothing to see here because now they're the number one and number two people at the FBI. That's
yeah,
making this whole thing so crazy. And that's why,
yeah,
and also the base, Trump's base, this isn't just a Democratic hoax. This is Trump's base saying we care about this and we want to see this. So they're just prolonging the inevitable. The
yeah,
shutdown will end at some point, especially after last night's election numbers came out. And so once it ends, they're going to swear in the new congresswoman. They're going to vote to release the Epstein files, and then it will assumably go up to the president, and he'll have to veto the bill, and then it's going to be a bigger controversy than ever.
yeah. And I mean, it's kind of remarkable to see, over in Britain, Prince Andrew, getting taken to the woodshed by the king there, and yet, Donald Trump just, we don't have a whole lot of accountability happening over here in the U.S. It's just, there a bit more of it over there across the pond, it seems.
You know what? It's not just over there in Britain, but also remember in France, there was that photographer who was implicated in the Epstein matter, a guy named Jean-Luc Brunel. He
Mm,
was involved with the modeling world, and he was accused of sexual assault. In fact, one of Epstein's main accuser, Virginia Giuffre, who passed away
yeah,
recently by suicide, alleged that Brunel procured women and minors, including young women, for sex with Epstein. And he was arrested back in France in 2020. And what happened? He was found dead in his prison cell in Paris.
yeah,
And I'm never one on conspiracy theories, but of course, you have two people, Epstein and Brunel, who were found dead in their prison cell by hanging, both of them. And they're the
wow,
only ones. Yeah. So you have Brunel, you have Epstein, you have Ghislaine Maxwell, and now you have former Prince Andrew, the only ones really held accountable for this. That's not a lot of people who, compared to the people who allegedly were involved. There are supposed to be hundreds of Johns out there of people who partook in this. And we're talking
yeah,
about as many people as you can count on one hand.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just astounding, and to me, it boggles the mind that they've been able to put this under wraps for as long as they have. But I think you're absolutely right. I think with the election results, there's going to have to be some movement on this shutdown thing. And then as soon as that happens, it's game on, and we'll have to reconvene and have this conversation again, Dave, about the Epstein case, because we're not letting it go on this program, and I know you're not either. But Dave, as always, thank you.
Hey, Jim, thank you. And last time I was on with you, I got so many new subscribers to my Substack, and my Substack was inactive, but now it's active.
Oh, great.
So, yes.
Yes, follow Dave on Substack. There it is right there, Dave Ehrenberg. And I always enjoy our conversations. I think you boil it down just perfectly. And, you got to have people who tell it like it is these days. We don't need to sugarcoat things over here in independent media. That's why there are folks watching and subscribing, because they don't want us to do that. So,
And you've done so well in independent media, Jim. I'm just, it's great to be on with you. Let's do it
yeah,
again.
we'll do it again. Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right.